I get it. When you're scrolling through Amazon you see a sleek white subwoofer hanging like a piece of modern art. The description promises deep, room-shaking bass, and the price looks reasonable. Then you pull it out of the box, try to mount it, and the whole thing feels like a gamble. Will it actually blend with the decor? Will it fill the space with the low end you need? And more importantly, will you end up spending extra cash on amps or wiring because the sub never quite lives up to the hype? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The JBL Professional C60PS/TWH is a hanging pendant subwoofer that's marketed to venues that want a clean ceiling-mounted look without sacrificing the low-frequency punch. It's not a bedroom sub you'll hide under a couch. It's meant for bars, restaurants, small event spaces, or even outdoor kiosks where you need a sturdy, weather-ready enclosure that can stay up high and still put out enough bass to make a crowd feel the music. Let's start with the kind of setup you're looking at. The unit comes with two 15-foot suspension cables, one main, one safety, so you can hang it from a standard ceiling joist or a commercial grid without needing a special rig. The cables are thick enough to support the weight of the 8-inch driver and the sealed enclosure, which is built to handle humidity, salt spray, UV exposure, and temperature swings. In practice, that means you could mount a pair in a beachfront restaurant patio and not worry about the salty air corroding the cabinet after a season. From a wiring perspective, the C60PS/TWH includes a passive crossover that's set up for up to 4 satellite speakers. That's a real convenience if you're already planning a multi-speaker system. No need to add an external crossover box. You just run the low-frequency signal from your amp or 70-volt line, and the built-in network directs the appropriate frequencies to the sub while sending the mids and highs to the satellites. For a small venue that doesn't have a dedicated sound engineer on site, that simplifies the signal chain a lot. Now, what about the bass itself? The heart of this sub is a Long-excursion 8-inch, 200 mm, low-frequency driver with a 2-inch high-temperature voice coil. On paper, 8 inches with a Long-excursion usually translates into solid, warm low end, good for rumble that you feel in your chest rather than just here. In the field, the sub delivers a respectable thump that fills a 2,000 square foot space when you're running a 150-watt amplifier at 8 ohms. It's not going to replace a 15-inch powerhouse in a concert hall, but for a CAF with background music or a small dance floor, the bass feels present without overwhelming the rest of the mix. One practical strength that often gets overlooked is the 88 dB nominal sensitivity. Because it's relatively efficient, you don't need a massive amp to get decent SPL. A 150-watt amp, something you can pick up for under $100, gets you solid coverage. If you already have a 70-volt distributed system in the building, you can hook the sub directly to that line and let the internal crossover do the work. That flexibility is a big time saver for owners who don't want to redesign their whole audio infrastructure. On the flip side, the power handling does have a ceiling. The sub is rated for 150 watts continuous at 8 ohms, and it can be run off a 70-volt line at about 100 watts. If you're trying to push it to the extreme, say, for a high-energy DJ set with heavy bass synths, you'll start to hear compression. The driver's excursion is long, but the enclosure isn't massive, so there's a limit to how much air it can move before it starts to choke on the low end. For most background music scenarios that's fine, but for a venue that wants club-grade bass, you'll need to look at a larger cabinet or add a second pair for reinforcement. Installation is another area where reality bites. The sub is designed to hang, which sounds straightforward, but you do need to make sure the mounting point can bear the weight, around 15 pounds per unit, plus the tension from the suspension cables. Some reviewers have mentioned that the included hardware is adequate for light commercial ceilings but may require additional bracing for older buildings. If you're a DIY enthusiast, you'll appreciate that the cables are color-coded and have quick-release clamps, but you still need a drill, a stud finder, and a willingness to climb a ladder. That's not a deal-breaker for most small business owners, but it's a hidden cost in terms of time and possibly hiring an electrician. Who should consider buying the JBL C60PS/TWH? If you run a bar, coffee shop, or small restaurant and you want a discreet, ceiling-mounted sub that blends with a modern interior, this is a solid candidate. The weatherproof rating also opens the door for outdoor patios, poolside bars, or even seasonal market stalls where you need something that can survive occasional rain or salty breezes. The built-in passive crossover makes it friendly for installations.